Canary Islands. Sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good evening and welcome to GB News Live with me, Alastair Stewart. Coming up, the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, has just ruled out any restrictions in England until the new year. The other UK nations put restrictions in place too early. That's the big question tonight. And are we facing a winter energy crisis? And who is to blame? But first, let's bring you right up to date with all of the other news. Here's Polly Middlehurst.
Alastair, thank you. Your news at 5 o'clock. As Alastair was just saying, the Health Secretary has announced there'll be no COVID restrictions introduced in England before the new year, but says people should remain cautious. Sajid Javid said the government won't hesitate to act if needed. Boris Johnson was briefed on the latest COVID data by the Chief Medical Officer, Professor Chris Whitty. Tighter measures have been introduced elsewhere in the UK, and that comes as new figures show England has reported over 98,000 new cases of COVID over Christmas and Boxing Day. 143 deaths have also been reported. In Scotland, there's been the highest recorded number of COVID cases, with nearly 30,000 positive results over the three-day Christmas period. And the following story does have some flashing images coming up. In Scotland, these restrictions apply to hospitality venues, which have come into force in Scotland, to try to stop the spread of the Omicron variant. Meanwhile, Northern Ireland has also introduced similar measures, including the rule of 6 when eating or drinking out and using table service only. Stephen Montgomery from the Scottish Hospitality Group spoke to GB News and said the restrictions are taking a toll on the industry.
It's a bit of a blow for us in a month that would traditionally give us most of our turnover, 30-35% of our turnover for the year, to get us through January, February and into March. And as well as that, it's the busiest time of the year. Hogmanay in Scotland is one of the biggest celebrations you'll ever see.
The Business and Energy Secretary has met with energy bosses to rapidly address wholesale gas prices. The chief executives of major suppliers met with Kwasi Kwarteng to discuss what the government's calling ongoing effects of record high global gas prices. Since the start of September, more than 24 companies have gone bust. A government spokesperson said meetings between the sector and ministers will continue over the coming days to make sure UK customers are protected. West Mercia Police has formally apologised to the family of the ex-professional footballer Dalian Atkinson over his death. The 48-year-old who played for Aston Villa died in 2016 after PC Benjamin Monk kicked him at least twice and tasered him 3 times. Monk was convicted of manslaughter and jailed for 8 years in June. The Chief Constable Pippa Mills said a police uniform does not grant officers immunity to behave unlawfully or abuse their powers. The numbers of Boxing Day shoppers on the high street fell to almost half of pre-pandemic levels. New figures show that footfall at shopping sites across the UK yesterday was 41% lower than the 2019 level. The numbers, which come from industry analyst Springboard, says nervousness about the COVID infection rate has played a part. The jury in the sex trafficking trial of Ghislaine Maxwell in the United States has resumed its deliberations today. The British socialite is on trial in America, accused of luring young girls to be molested by Jeffrey Epstein. The jury last sat on Wednesday before breaking for the Christmas holidays. Miss Maxwell denies all the charges. That's your news update. I'll be back in an hour.
Polly, thanks very much indeed. Now let's have some more on that story, which both I and Polly reported on. In the last 20 minutes, the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, has ruled out any new restrictions in England until the new year. In Wales, the rules were tightened this morning, including limits on social gatherings, the hospitality sector and leisure. James Evans, the Conservative Senedd member for Brecon and Radnorshire, told us the new measures were brought in too hastily.
It is extremely confusing having different rules right the way across the country. We've seen here in Wales, Mark Drakeford has brought new COVID rules back. We have not seen the data as to why he has brought these restrictions out. He has gone early in my view and my party's view. We have not seen the data to say that hospitalizations are up. We've not seen the data to say that deaths are up. This is going to be a really confusing time for businesses. I've been inundated with business owners contacting me saying that they're going to have to find extra staff, but the labour isn't there. We cannot get people to work now. And all the social distancing rules, the limits on people meeting indoors, the amount of people who can sit around a table at a pub, this is going to decimate, yet again, the hospitality industry, which has been put under severe pressure because of the pandemic. And before long, we are going to have to start to learn to live with this virus. It is not going away. And the sooner we can actually start to live with it, the better, because our businesses just cannot continue to be shut down and have restrictions put on them all the time. It's just ridiculous.
And we'll have more on that at 6 o'clock with Professor Carol Sikora and Tory MP Andrew Bridgen. Now, the Business and Energy Secretary has met with energy bosses today amid warnings that bills could skyrocket to £2,000 a year next year. Yesterday, Lois Perry, a broadcaster and director of climate campaign group CAR26, Benny Pizer, who's the director of Net Zero Watch, and Laurie Leybourne-Langton, an environmental policy researcher, spoke to GB News to give their thoughts on whether we are now in an energy crisis and do we only have ourselves to blame.
We have experienced high prices for a while now, and it looks like those are set to increase, and that could have a pretty severe impact, particularly on the most vulnerable households in the country. For many people, I think it has been a crisis. Next year, if they go as high as we fear, and I think we definitely could describe the situation as being a crisis.
Oh, it's entirely the fault of the government. Gas production in the UK has declined by 60% in the last 10 years. We're sitting on massive amounts of natural gas, but the government is essentially banning the development of shale gas. The gas prices in the US are a tenth of what they are here. So in other words, it's 10 times more expensive here. And simply because Boris is not willing to extract our own natural gas resources. He is so dogmatic about policies that he's essentially turning Britain over to to Russia's demands. It's crazy. We should use our own natural gas, but the government has to get a grip and realize that unless they bring down the cost of energy, they will essentially commit political suicide.
And Lois, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, COP26 was a very big event, and so much talk about fighting climate change and moving to net zero rapidly. Is some of these crippling energy prices something to do with the rush to net zero?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with every single word that Benny's just said. And, I think Laurie probably knows in his heart that Benny's absolutely right too. And it's very disingenuous for him to not even mention the rush to net zero just then. But, we're rushing towards green policies and net zero with no consultation on the public whatsoever. And the public want to be consulted.
In her Christmas message, Her Majesty the Queen spoke poignantly about her late husband in an emotional address to the nation. Dr. Gavin Ashenden, a former Anglican bishop and a former chaplain to Her Majesty, told us his thoughts about the speech.
I thought it was very beautiful. Isn't it wonderful the way she embodies the nation's great-grandmother so beautifully? She divided it into 3 parts, and each of them was very personal and special. She talked about Philip and the experience of bereavement and loss, and that will talk to so many people who have lost people they've loved this year to death, COVID or otherwise. She talked about accessing the inner child within us, and that's probably a very sensible challenge to us at this dark part of the year when a lot of people are finding it difficult to make ends meet and to manage. And then finally, she talked about Jesus and the way in which he had been the bedrock of her life and experience. All of our lives have been affected by coronavirus. I was looking forward to welcoming my daughter home for Christmas, and she's now sat in a bedsit hundreds of miles away all by herself. The Queen wanted to speak to all of us who've had our lives affected by illness, by loneliness, by isolation, by deprivation. So it was very important that she did do so. But the thing that made me laugh, actually, was when she put in that special bit about carols where you have to know the right tune. And she was obviously putting in a dig at some experience of some idiot changing the tune to something unfamiliar that we don't know and saying, look, we need some handholds in life, and the right tune to the right carol is one of them. I thought that was very funny, and it will have touched a number of people as well, alongside her solidarity in the face of COVID. But I think in the end it comes by finding a deeper meaning for our humanity and finding a way so that we can live life without fear. We can find values of love and forgiveness and hope, and finding in God a companion, which of course is what Christ means. Christ came to be born so that we could put a face to God, put words and a voice to God. I think that one of the things that COVID does is to strip us back to essentials, and for many of us remind us that we need a faith, a real living faith, to make our way through the burdens and the difficulties that life can sometimes throw at us, as it has done this year.
Gavin Ashenden, former chaplain to Her Majesty the Queen. The Northern Ireland Children to Lapland Trust makes children's dreams come true. It flies more than 100 children a year to Lapland to give them the magical experience of actually meeting Santa Claus, sleigh rides and much, much more. So let's take a look back.
Oh, Frosty the snowman was alive as he could be, and the children say he'd love and play just the same as you and me.
We have all cursed the restrictions of a COVID Christmas and just how it curtails our plans. But spare a thought for those who may not see another.
The Northern Ireland Children to Lapland Trust was formed 12 years ago, and for the past 12 years, well, in effect for the past 10 years, we've been taking a plane full of Northern Ireland children up to see Santa Claus up in Lapland. I say only 10 out of the 12 because last year and this year, I'm afraid COVID has affected us very badly indeed. It meant that last year we just couldn't travel to Lapland. It wasn't feasible to take over 100 children, seriously ill children, some terminally ill, to a very cold Lapland.
The innocence of the children's dreams were being brought to life on a flight to the Arctic Circle to see Santa.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Oh, jingle bells, jingle.
For those non-believers, the magic of Lapland is hard to deny. Brought by huskies, skidoos and yes, reindeers to an underground kingdom where ice sculptures, elves and train rides existed. The families of these seriously and terminally ill children shared an experience never to be forgotten.
It's been about mega memories for the three of them, the three children, so it has, and it's been absolutely amazing. It's like something out of a storybook.
Great, it's great to see all the wee ones, you know, isn't it? Getting to see Santa Claus, wasn't it? Yeah. Good boy. Thanks.
For the past 2 years, this charity has only been able to deliver presents to the children who have had a struggle that most of us couldn't even imagine.
We got all the 110 kids that we were to bring. We got their names and addresses from all the health trusts, and we got them presents to the value of £200, and we distributed those to all the kids in their homes in the week before Christmas. We also got letters from Santa Claus and a video from Santa Claus individually to each of their homes.
I wish I could read this every day about me again.
Back in Lapland, there were gifts aplenty. The magic of the day and excitement in everyone's eyes was a gift that would never, ever fade. The charity is so eager to return to its dream-making flights and realises it brings much more to these children than the experience of the day.
We sometimes take these things for granted, and sometimes the feedback that we get really hits home. We had one letter from a mother and said how much it meant to her daughter to be singled out for this, but not only her daughter, the brothers and sisters, the aunts, the uncles, the grannies, their school friends, the whole community took great pride and joy in the fact that this little girl was going to Lapland, and she said it gave her confidence such a boost. And we maybe sometimes don't recognise just how much of an impact it can make.
As this very special Christmas flight kissed the Irish skyline on its homeward journey, it occurred to me that there were two very different emotions on board. Those of the parents who had made precious memories, and those of the children who had had their dreams come true. Douglas Beattie, GB News, Belfast.
Love that. Hope you enjoyed it. Coming up in a few moments, it's a very Mercy Christmas with our own Mercy Maroki. I'll be back at 6 o'clock, where I'll be joined by the Conservative MP Andrew Bridgen and oncologist Professor Carol Sikora to react to that breaking news that there will be no COVID restrictions in England, fresh ones that is, before the new year. But now, let's bring you up to date with the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather then, and the UK is looking cloudy for many of us with outbreaks of patchy rain moving north. But let's take a look at the details. Turning increasingly windy across the southwest this evening with gales towards the coast. Cloudy for all with outbreaks of rain. Very mild with temperatures well above the average. It'll also be breezy towards the coasts in the southeast, but light winds further inland. Often cloudy with outbreaks of rain in places. There will also be a lot of cloud and some hill fog, across much of Wales through this evening. Patchy rain